So my name is Marcy Harris. I am a co-founder of PopVox Foundation, a nonprofit that supports innovation in government and civic engagement. This event is one of our first empowered engagement projects through which we are working to amplify and demystify public participation opportunities hosted by government agencies and to broaden and diversify the voices and perspectives that are included in these processes. My PopVox Foundation colleagues and I are elated to co-host this event with Newmark Philanthropies and Aspen Digital. And we are all so grateful to the team from the Office of the National Cyber Director for taking the time to be with us today. And now it is my honor to introduce Craig Newmark to help frame today's discussion. Most of us are familiar with Craig Newmark as the founder of Craigslist. Since leaving Craigslist in 1995, he's become a prolific funder through Newmark Philanthropies with a focus on voter protection, women in technology, veterans, and military families. The foundation also supports trustworthy journalism and improving our information ecosystem. Earlier this year, Newmark Philanthropies committed over $50 million in grants administered through Aspen Digital to build what Craig calls a cyber civil defense. In a recent interview, Craig was asked about his commitment to bolstering the cyber workforce in education, to which he replied, "It's up to all of us to play whatever role that we can. And since I've been lucky enough to acquire some resources, it's part of my life's mission to support the people who are helping protect us." Basically, a nerd's gotta do what a nerd's gotta do. So let us welcome Craig Newmark to share more about his work and what we can all do to help protect our information ecosystem. Over to you, Craig.
Marcy, thanks. I really appreciate it. Now, seriously speaking, I'm really encouraged by the National Cyber Director in the White House to making cyber workforce and related cybersecurity education a big priority. This RFI is a real big important part of that because we need to move forward together as a country. It's kind of like in World War II, everyone was expected to play a role if they could. Right now, I'm preparing my own RFA response, and I'm hoping everyone here is also doing the same. Cyber workforce development is a big deal because we need deeply trained professionals to help defend the country and to defend our enterprises, the whole country. We need that education also to extend down to the civilian level, and that's what I'm calling cyber civil defense. The notion, like in World War II, everyone who can play a role should be doing so. My vision of cyber civil defense, and I have contributed already well over 50 million. That includes providing awareness and educating people on the civilian level about the dangers and protections within cybersecurity. Everyone needs to get trained to protect themselves, their homes, their businesses. And we need a lot of people trained who can help protect the country. And we need to also remind people that inclusivity, DEIA, will be a really important part of this from the very beginning. It's the foundation and the goal together. I do want to give proper credit to a lot of our cyber civil defense partners, some of whom I fear I'll be forgetting. But even today, the ransomware task force at the Institute for Security Technology is playing a vital role. Ransomware is a big deal, a big problem for the country. When it comes to tools and services, I'm also like to give credit to the Global Cyber Alliance and Consumer Reports, who's been helping protect the country for like 85 years or so, from when washing machines were high tech. For workforce and education, I'm working with the Girl Scouts of the USA, Black Girls Hack, Girls Who Code, Share the Mic in Cyber, and Aspen Digital. We're working on getting a network of cyber clinics across the country, which includes the City University of New York, Cal Berkeley, University of Texas in Austin, and a whole bunch more. Folks, Please help us out. Please reply to the RFI if you can by November 3rd. That date's coming up really soon. And yes, a nerd's got to do what a nerd's got to do. And like the Batman says, I might not be the nerd you want, but I'm the nerd you got. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Greg. And now to introduce our featured speaker for the webinar, I will pass the mic to the woman who made this discussion possible, someone who lives every day at the intersection of public policy and public engagement and cybersecurity. Nicole Tisdale wears many hats, and we are very honored that one of those hats is as a PopVox Foundation Fellow. She's also a senior advisor for cyber workforce and education at Aspen Digital of the Aspen Institute. She spent over a decade on Capitol Hill, including many years as counsel and staff director for the House Homeland Security Committee before joining the Biden transition team and later the Biden White House as legislative affairs director for the National Security Council. She is the author of the best-selling book that I strongly recommend. I usually have a copy around here sitting on my desk, Right to Petition, a practical guide to creating change in government with political advocacy tools and tips. And she is passionate about bringing young people from diverse backgrounds into public service, especially the national security field. Over to you, Nicole.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Marcy, and thank you, Craig, for setting the scene for us today. I'm super excited about today. As Marcy mentioned, my worlds are coming together today. So I have the work that I've always been passionate about in terms of civic engagement, but also combining that with increasing workforce diversity and inclusion in national security. And specifically, we're going to be talking about national security and cybersecurity today. And so I want, as people are going through the webinar, I want to make sure that everyone understands the main goal today is about giving you the information and the confidence that you need to participate in the White House's request for information. We're going to be referring to the request for information as the RFI. And I want to give you all a little bit of context about the Office of the National Cyber Director, which we call ONCD for short. This office is housed at the White House, and it was created by Congress to be the top advisors to the president on all things cybersecurity. ONCD will be creating our country's first cyber strategy and workforce. So this RFI is an unprecedented opportunity for researchers, advocates, public servants, students, community leaders, everyone to participate in the process and share your ideas and the work that you've been doing to the highest levels of government so that you can help set the agenda. As we go through today, we're going to be taking questions. We'll be taking your questions from the audience. We have a couple of questions that we have ready, but as you get ready, if you're still on the fence about submitting the RFI, I just want to give you all a little bit of context and reiterate, there are no wrong answers to this RFI process. This process is about shaping the agenda because the government isn't 100% sure what they want to do. And they want to hear from us first before they come up with a strategy that everyone will be in charge of implementing. Also, your submission will go to the people who are going to act on it. So you'll see today we're joined by the Office of the National Cyber Director. Y'all, these are the people that are going to write the strategy. And so it's really important for you to engage with them because they have created this RFI process where they're directly saying, we want to hear from you. The other thing is ONCD recognizes that you're the expert. That's why they issued an RFI in the first place. They want to hear from people that are on the ground that have been trying to implement cybersecurity workforce in education, and that's you. And so as we go through today, we want to encourage you all to feel open to asking questions. And we want to make sure that you have everything that you need to submit so that you're ready to go by November 3rd and have submitted your recommendations to the ONCD. So now I want to take a second to introduce Camille Stewart, who is joining us. Camille Stewart Gloster is the Deputy National Cyber Director for Technology and Ecosystem for the White House Office of the National Cyber Director. In her role, she works to lead technology, supply chain, data security, cyber workforce, and education efforts. Camille is a cyber technology and national security strategist and policy leader whose career has spanned at the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. I know Camille very well from her previous work where she was also, before ONCD, she served at Google, where she was the global head of product security and strategy. And before that, she was the head of security policy and election integrity at Google Play. Camille also this is her second round of public service because she previously led the cyber diplomacy, technology policy, privacy, and technical areas as the senior policy advisor for cyber infrastructure and resilience at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Camille is also very passionate about expanding cyber, technology, and national security workforces and co-founded #Share the Mic in Cyber, a movement and the Next Generation NatSat initiative to support investment in highly skilled and diverse workforce. Both efforts serve to highlight the need for increased diversity in cyber and national security fields. And we're glad that Camille has been able to take the work that she's done in the private sector and bring it directly to the White House. So Camille, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Nicole, for that great introduction. And thank you all for hosting this. PopBox, Craig Newmark, Aspen Digital, we really appreciate the support for this Herculean effort, to be frank. I'll start at the beginning. So Nicole gave a great overview of ONCD, and we like to think about cybersecurity in the context of the broader ecosystem. ONCD is focused on creating a thriving digital ecosystem that we all can share in. That means that all of us need to take part in it. And the charge from Director Inglis was to create a workforce strategy that was whole of nation. So your inputs, your insights are extremely, extremely important. As we think about cybersecurity, it is technology, people, and doctrine against the backdrop of an adversary. That people part is really important. It's not just the human capital issues we're here to discuss today, but people use technology, people create technology, people are the malicious actors. So understanding how technology shows up in the lives of people and the societal context in which it operates is extremely important. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a highly skilled and diverse workforce that contemplates those things. And so we are endeavoring to write a strategy that not only covers the federal workforce, it is the national cyber workforce, education and training, and digital awareness writ large. So how do we promote digital safety behaviors across the entire population that can raise the collective tide and everyone can embrace more positive cybersecurity behaviors? We recognize that the action of an individual is directly tied to organizational and national outcomes. And while we endeavor to move the load and the brunt of the burden on that back to the folks who are skilled and have the expertise, the cyber workforce, we also want to make sure that folks are empowered and making intentional choices about how to secure themselves in their daily lives. And so those 4 buckets are quite large. And so we are asking for your input to support us in understanding the challenges, the opportunities, and where we should direct our efforts and how we can best support industry and the non-federal sector. So state and local, nonprofits, the gambit. And so this RFI is a tasking to you all to contribute to that effort. Don't feel overwhelmed by the length of it and all of the questions that are included in there. Pick the ones where you have expertise and provide your insight. That's all that we're asking for you. It doesn't have to be extremely formal. We're not looking for white papers on each topic. This is really just an opportunity for us to have a conversation in a way that's scalable.
Thanks so much, Camille. I think that's a really good context setting for us today. And we're going to get into some of these questions because we're also joined by other staff within ONCD. And one of the things that I want us to get into, because we're going to go ahead and we don't want to pontificate for too long. We want to go ahead and open this up for questions. And so I want to take some time and just allow Catherine Brooks to introduce herself, and then we'll kick off the questions.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Brooks. I'm Director of Cyber Partnerships here at Aspen Digital. And over the past several months, I've had the pleasure of working really closely with Craig Newmark as we launched the Cyber Civil Defense Initiative. And in doing so, we've had the chance to interact with many of the stakeholders on this call, several others working on important cyber workforce, education, and training issues. And we've heard several questions about the RFI pretty directly. So happy to proctor a few of those to start, and would really encourage all of you to submit your questions as well in the Q&A box here so we can address those afterwards. So I'll start with a 5,000-foot question, because we've heard from a lot of different folks that this is actually their first time participating in any government RFI process. So would love to hear from the ONCD team. How is the RFI information used? And if I'm somebody who's submitting for the first time, how can I follow up and learn kind of what the progress is after my submission?
That's a great question. Before we answer that, I want to take a moment to introduce the team. Paul Tortora is the Deputy Assistant National Cyber Director for Cyber Workforce Education and Training, and Suzanne Nielsen is our Director for Strategy Development for the strategy. So you've got the right folks on the line to answer a question like that. And I'll actually ask Suzanne to start the answer.
Katie, can you recap the question for me, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've heard from several folks that this is actually their first time ever participating in a government RFI process. So after I press submit on it, what can I expect next? And how do I keep in touch with how the information is going to be used and informing the strategy?
Yeah, thank you very much, Katie. So we are really looking forward to having the opportunity to review the RFIs that have come in. We have committed to by January, early January, having also examined the ones that are followed with or accompanied by presentation requests. And we will have not only reviewed the content, but have invited any presenters by the beginning of January and hope to have all those presentations complete by early February. So the RFI, part of the pace will depend on the volume of input received, and we look forward to gathering a team from within ONCD and across the interagency that's going to help us to look at all that content. I would also say that there is this is one of the ways that we're gathering input for the strategy. We also have an interagency working group and a series of workshops. So the RFI is part of our commitment, as you've already heard, together and to hear from the broadest array of stakeholders out there. So thank you.
Excellent. And you've teed up my next question perfectly, because I'm going to go in a bit of a who, what, when, where, why order. So first question is who. Are there any qualifications to actually submit a response? Do I have to be like affiliated with an organization? What if I'm just a concerned citizen or a student who cares about this? Can I still share my thoughts in the RFI?
Yes, please. You do not have to be affiliated with an organization. All we're asking for is your insights on these very specific questions and issue areas. So if you are a student who wants to speak very directly to your engagement in pursuing a career in cybersecurity, please do. If you are a practitioner who's seen programs that work or lines of effort or even challenges that you'd like to see addressed, please submit an answer. And you don't have to answer all of the questions.
And you've actually teed up my next question. So that's a bit of a what question. So looking across the different categories, certainly there are many different elements of cyber workforce training, education. I think you've done a great job with your team of enumerating all of those different items, but it's still a pretty long list. So what if my work intersects with all those areas? How do I pick the most important one to actually submit a response on?
Paul, do you want to take this one?
Sure, great question. One is, if this isn't a mandatory homework assignment, we don't want people trying to fill out everything. But if you do intersect with other areas, we're looking for opinions we haven't heard before. So this is a first of its kind, like Director Ingalls said, we want a whole of nation approach to this. So this was one way to try to get that whole of nation. So if you intersect with a number of the questions, I'd say address them. Regardless of your expertise level, we're looking for innovative ideas. There is no need, I repeat, no need to fill out the entire document. We're not grading it. We're just looking for the good ideas. And then we're going to develop the themes and outline of what we think should then go into a strategy and how do we address those. So I don't know if Camille or Suzanne, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so this is Suzanne. I would just affirm that if you have one sub area under one topic where you really think that your idea contributes, that's really sufficient reason to submit an RFI. So a focused answer that goes deeply into depth in just one of the issues we're confronting really has the potential to add a lot of value. So I would just encourage you to think about going deep within the space allotted, as opposed to going broad, as being probably usually more useful to us.
Got it. That's really helpful. And I appreciate the differences noted between this and a homework assignment. But like a homework assignment, it does have a deadline. So that's coming up this Thursday, November 3rd. Are we assuming that's at 11:59 Eastern time? Like, I know that there's an email there that people can submit to. If you could just elaborate on when exactly that's due, that would be super helpful.
So I would, if I could take that, I would just say, in the absence of having given a time of day, I would say midnight, 23:59. And for those who have a tendency to submit at the last second, 23:59 or 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on the 3rd.
All right. Noted. Appreciate that. That was actually one of our most asked questions. So thank you. All right. I have a handful of other questions that we received in advance. And I see a few that are currently queuing here in the chat. I want to encourage everyone to submit those because I'm going to hand it over to Nicole in just a second to proctor those. But in the meantime, let's move to the how. So do you have any preferences on actual like submission format? Can we include graphics, media, other things and what people ultimately submit?
While it would be a lot of fun to watch a bunch of videos, please don't submit those. We want to be able to really capture the content that you're submitting. So something in the form of a document is the best. That could include graphics, you know, you could capture it textually as well as illustrate it with a graphic, but no video or other media files. It'll make it harder for us to get through all of the reviews.
Got it. That's really good to know. And then we took note that there was a part of the response that allowed you to indicate your interest in being an innovative speaker and kind of being more involved in that engagement process actually after the submission date. Can you elaborate on what's entailed in that and how folks might include really strong interest in being able to participate in that, in their responses?
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen. I guess it depends on the response. We are planning to have a convening that features some of the folks that indicate that they would like to share their expertise with a broader collective. One of the things that we recognize is that the federal government cannot do all of this. That's why it's a whole of nation strategy. That's why we're engaging all of you. Much of this will be a charge to industry, a charge to the education sector, a charge to a bunch of discrete stakeholder groups to take their piece of this and run with it. And as such, that means that they need to hear your expertise too. So to the extent you feel like your contribution would benefit a broader group of stakeholders in this process, it would be great for you to indicate that you're willing to share that more broadly.
Excellent. Okay. And then one of the probably the most intriguing parts of this RFI that I saw was a category that I think you all call the Gordian knot category. So those out of the box solutions, those crazy zany ideas that maybe we haven't pursued yet, but could be a big piece of this puzzle. So could you elaborate on kind of what you're looking for in that category? And then also we saw some criteria here about making sure that responses are actionable, cost effective, and impactful. So if you could share some thoughts on that too, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to limit innovative ideas and or have folks feel like the limits of government should be their limits or traditional limits on how things are working currently should dictate your response. One of the great things about this space is so many things are new. There are opportunities for change and innovation, and we want that to come through in the answers. So we try to emphasize the fact that even if it's never been done before, it doesn't fit in current models, it would mean changing a bunch of things. Those things are not off the table for consideration. We'd like to understand them and see how they fit into the landscape. But they should be action-oriented and done in a means that allows us to maximize our dollar, allows industry to maximize their dollar. That's how you incentivize folks to do it. So the actionable and cost-effective piece and balancing that cost with the level of impact that you'll yield is really important for it to be something that is implementable and something that folks will adopt and drive forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, that brings me at least to the end of the questions that we received from some of our partners on the cyber civil defense side. I know we've seen several questions start to queue, so I'll hand it back over to Nicole to cover some of those.
Sure. And thanks to everybody for being so open with the responses and everything. I hope as people are listening, any anxiety that you have about the RFI process is going down. So we're going to keep trudging ahead. I wanted to get into a couple of questions that we got in terms of substance. And so one of our questions was about educating the general public on ransomware. And for the attendee that asked the question, I thought it was a really great question. One of the things that I want to flag for people in the RFI process. So this process is about you submitting your comments and your recommendations to the ONCD about things that you would like to see in a national strategy on cyber education and workforce. And so I really just want to caution you all from asking the office too many questions. The way the comment process works is you are supposed to submit comments about things that you would like them to consider or include in the strategy. If you submit questions for the office, you're not likely to get a response. And also you're going to miss an opportunity to inform the strategy. And so if you have questions that you would like the office to answer, just a quick little technical note, what you want to do is actually turn it into a comment. To what Camille just addressed, you want to structure your question in a way that's something that's actionable that you would like the office to do. So that is a really good example of if you have questions about how the ONCD office envisions educating on cyber awareness, such as ransomware or ransom payments, make it into a comment. Say that the strategy should include emerging threats, such as ransomware, not only what we do on the cyber defense side in terms of some of the more traditional things like multi-factor authentication. And so I want to jump into another question that we got that's really about education and including cyber education into our high school, our K through 12 curriculum. If people have suggestions about this, Camille, one of the things that I think is probably most difficult with that is that's one of those things, I think we all agree it should be happening, but how does someone flag that in the RFI process in a way that is actionable, but keeping in mind like investments are going to be limited?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we're all tracking that should be incorporated into K through 12 education. If you've seen programs that work really well, if you have ideas on how to support state and local entities as they figure out how to incorporate that in their curriculum, if you have seen after school programs that work, things that kind of help augment the curriculum as is, we will of course be working with Department of Education to support state and local entities as they evolve their curriculums over time. But if you have ways for us to support K through 12 education near term and long term, those would be great suggestions. I don't know if Suzanne or Paul has anything to add.
I'll just jump in and add too. So when they're showing examples, Camille, would it be good for people to say like, this is what is happening in Tupelo, Mississippi, and this is a program that we saw, like, and also if they have the points of contact, like share with you all the points of contact so that you have some models and examples?
Yeah, an outline for how that's working, why it's working well, how it's funded, any information they have about that, and then yes, of course, points of contact. But if you've seen a program in your hometown that has empowered your student to not only understand their digital safety and awareness, but maybe has even been a conduit to a career in cyber, that would be really great for you to outline. I think Suzanne's trying to get off mute too.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is that we are obviously looking at things that the federal government across the various departments and agencies and activities can help to affirm and enforce. But we have been charged explicitly to write a whole of nation strategy. So there may be things that we encourage, embrace, and try to incentivize that are not within federal government direct control. So if a proposal is about something that ought to happen, that's valuable to the extent that there's a actor associated with it and a mechanism, that's great help. But we'll be looking at a variety of ways of thinking about how we might involve really the whole of nation actors in this strategy in order to try to achieve the scale and the degree of transformation that we're after. So I would say if you have a mechanism, a proposal for how exactly it might be done, please include it. If you don't let that stop you from submitting the RFI, because it may intersect with other ideas that we're receiving from others.
That's very helpful context. And I guess staying on the role that this is going to be a whole of society, we got a question about how specific some of the cyber education and awareness RFIs can be. So if someone is really focused on certifying election cybersecurity staff and they're focused on doing the work at the state and local level, we want to just make sure that's going to be something that should be submitted to. If people are doing very specific type of cyber education and awareness, is this the place to submit?
I would encourage that submission. I think that the level of generality in the strategy may not include all of those specific cases, or however, the strategy, our intention definitely is to support it with an implementation plan, which would get much more specific. So as we write the strategy, and until we're actually writing it, we won't have a complete view of the level of generality or specificity we're able to reach. But I would say we really would like to use this opportunity to garner good ideas, even if that they might be so specific. They might inform a principle in the strategy, but they could form an action in the implementation plan. So I really appreciate that question.
Yeah, so you heard it directly from ONCD. If you're worried about if your topic fits, I would really encourage you all to look at the 3 topic areas and then find something within the sub area, even if it's not a perfect fit. You want to just make sure that you're submitting. And so to that question, and I will say anyone else that has questions that are specific to cyber awareness topics, there's a section for that. It's section 3. Now I can't go into the subs without trying to pull up the RFI, but just try to get your response in the area that is going to fit best. We've also gotten a couple of questions about what kind of happens next. So for a lot of people who may be watching this webinar, this is their first time participating in the RFI process. And so can you all just give us a little bit about kind of what the next steps are after you all get the comments?
Yeah, so I believe Suzanne earlier on mentioned that we have federal working groups and we have some convenings that we do. That information will feed that work. As we convene and coalesce around what content should be in the strategy, how these programs are supporting the community, how the challenges and opportunities that you've identified can, should, and do manifest themselves in the strategy. We'll be working through that. From there, there'll be that convening in February that we're talking about for the folks who raise their hands and say, my information should be shared more broadly, or I'd like to talk about this a little bit more. We'll be selecting some folks to participate in that. And then the strategy will come out at a point and we will start to engage again on how can we implement this? how can we move this forward? What are the roles of the various stakeholders across that whole of nation picture? What are universities going to do? What are K through 12 educators going to do? What are, each individual charged to do? And we will all work together to drive that forward. So there'll be some touch points between now and strategy release, and then of course lots of work collaboratively on implementation. I don't know if Paul or Suzanne want to add to that.
Yeah, just to add on. So once we collect these later this week, Suzanne and I and some of the folks from our larger federal workforce we'll meet and we'll go over these, literally go over them and look at themes, ideas, whether it's something specific to election training for cybersecurity specialists or something broad for digital awareness. And hopefully we can identify enough areas that seem to maybe fit into bins. If not, we're going to look for those new ideas. Like what haven't we seen before, which is why we prompt us to think about using an RFI, because there have been a number of strategies going back 15, some even say over 20 years, looking at cybersecurity, both at the more specialized roles down to cyber and digital awareness. But most of those have been inside of government, as well as, basically within the DC Beltway. So hopefully, Suzanne and I and Camille looking forward, if we're going to, hopefully we'll have a eureka moment reading some of these, or at least one of these RFI inputs says, we hadn't thought about that. You take this program at this middle school and you could take it, it's scalable, and why haven't you done that? So we're looking at ideas like that. That will take us probably into early December to get through some of the meat of those. We are expecting a flood, a tsunami of RFIs to come in on 3 November, thanks to events like this, Nicole, and you guys, since we're hearing others who are getting workshops together and efforts to, since it's such a noble effort, everyone sees. So, but that at least takes us to the end of the calendar year of going through these ideas and hopefully developing some key themes, ideas that we hadn't thought about, but those that we have, maybe it'll reaffirm some of the challenges and opportunities we'd like to address. Suzanne, you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so. I guess I would just say, please don't be afraid to be bold in your proposals. We're, as we approach this challenge, the scale of the challenge, the speed at which it's in our benefit as a country to address it, are all on a grand scale. So please be bold and ambitious. And we really appreciate those ideas.
Thank you. And I just to hit on the point that Paul made as well. So we really want to make sure that people are aware, because you all have a very tight timeline, and I do think y'all are going to get a flood of RFIs. I know everybody on this webinar is going to submit an RFI. And so just a quick reminder to everybody, there is a 10-page maximum on what you can submit. And I know some of y'all have white papers that are amazing, but they're also 40 pages. And so you're gonna have to go through and pull out the most important things and make those recommendations and share those examples with the office. The other thing that I wanna highlight that Suzanne and Camille mentioned earlier too, while you don't have to be a part of an organization to submit to this RFI, if you've been working with a group, or if there are a group of y'all don't be afraid to combine your response and submit together. Because again, we're going to have a very small team trying to take on a very large task and a large project. So if you're able to, and you have groups that you've been working with, you don't have to be a part of an organization, but you can aggregate your responses and you can submit together. I want to make sure we still have like a couple of technical questions that are coming in. I love the cyber crowd, because only the cyber crowd would be so specific. Is like, but what is the format that we need to submit, y'all? Like, is it a Word document? Is it plain text? Is it a PDF? What do you need, a spreadsheet? What's going to be the easiest thing for you all to evaluate this information?
A Word document or a PDF is great. Something that we can use to see, because these are text-based, remember, not your videos, not your audio clips. So something that we can use to kind of parse out the information, because as we mentioned, we'll be putting them in the bucket, really thinking about how do they align to the other suggestions we have, and where are the things that completely deviate, and how does that change what we were thinking or add to it? Is there a new challenge we need to take a look at? So your Word documents and PDFs would be great.
Perfect. And I just want to make sure, I don't think that I'm seeing any more questions. I know Katie and Marcy are also helping me to monitor the chat. If there are no more questions, I'll turn it over to ONCD and we can let you all give like those last words of encouragement, and then we can follow up with some information for more details about the RFI.
Wonderful. I'll let everyone say something, but I'll just kick us off. First of all, thank you all again for hosting this. This is an amazing opportunity to just kind of connect with you all and help you understand the content that we're looking for. I know that it probably seems a little daunting to reply to an RFI, but really we are hoping that this will be the easiest list possible. We're trying to pick your brain. So really envision it as a conversation between you and us, and let's make it as targeted as possible. Don't feel overwhelmed by the length of the request. Just pick the places where you have something to say and say it to us. We'll look forward to engaging you in this way and in any ways that become available throughout the process. But we're really excited to try to understand the challenges from your perspective, the opportunities from your perspective, and understand the programs that are underpinning the progress that you've seen across the industry. We really want to build that highly skilled and diverse workforce that will be a force multiplier for the work we're doing across the cybersecurity community. So we're looking forward for your partnership on this and really appreciate you taking the time to attend this webinar and to submit your responses.
Great. Paul, Suzanne?
I'll jump in. Actually, there's a couple of questions I'm going to head and address real quick. One from Eric Geller. What barriers does ONCD believe make it difficult for high schools and colleges to add cybersecurity into their curriculum? So we're collecting information. I don't have hard data for you, but it does, there are things, anecdotal evidence that shows there are enough skilled educators at many levels, even at colleges. So we're looking at that. That's obviously going to be one of our thoughts, is how do we address the educator shortfall? Sometimes it's just the curriculum. Actually, the educators are skilled. They don't have the updated cybersecurity curriculum. Other times it's the technology, not having the right tools, devices, network capacity, cyber ranges. And there's others that are involved with society and the challenges that you might find at certain parts of the country. So we don't have answers for you, Eric, on that, but there are obviously some anecdotal evidence of some barriers, at least a number of opportunities for us to address educators' curricula, expanding broadband, getting more technology to people, pushing out instead of waiting for people to ask for cyber curriculum or support. Maybe you can find better ways to develop hubs in certain areas, use of, we were at Hampton University a couple of weeks ago, and the discussion was, could they be a cyber education hub to push cyber security and awareness horizontally to other HBCUs, but also down to the communities and back into their neighborhood. So there are lots of interesting ideas that we've come across. So no definitive information for you, Eric, but lots of ideas. And maybe we'll get some more through the RFI. Then another question was from Kim Alexander: would projects to create new academic programs to train and certify election cybersecurity staff at the state and local levels be appropriate? I think that was already asked. But yeah, we'd love to hear those ideas, because there are 50 states and a number of territories in Commonwealth that also have challenges in election security. In my own state, they use thumb drives to move data between the device you put your vote in and the main server. So definitely need some cybersecurity at all levels. So not just cybersecurity staff at election, but think about all the critical infrastructure and all the things, school IT systems with the threat of ransomware. Plenty of what may seem like narrow specific areas, but aren't. They actually apply across the nation. Cybersecurity actually can apply more broadly when you think about what is actual cybersecurity in an election versus in maintaining school records or in hospital records. So while it might seem narrow, please provide that input. Love to hear the ideas you have. Also, if we can take it, make it actionable. And what we're always looking at is scalable across the nation or into more than just one locale. So thanks again for everyone's interest in the RFI, your support to the nation. This is going to have a big impact, we believe, and so we appreciate you and looking forward to all those inputs. So I'll turn it over to Suzanne.
And thank you. I'll just sort of pick up where Paul left off, which is just want to express my gratitude to you for your interest in this process, as evident in your participation in today's webinar, and just to really affirm that we do have a tremendous opportunity to produce a strategy that addresses a true national need. And so to have the civic engagement, the opportunity to hear from the broadest array of stakeholders possible. And I hope that if you had any doubt about our sincerity in looking for the best ideas and our eagerness to take on board your thoughts, that any doubts along those lines no longer exist. For my part, just thank you so much as we get ready to dive deeper into the strategy formulation. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizers of this webinar for creating the forum. Really appreciate it.
Of course. And I just want to reiterate that point. Thank you so much, Suzanne, Paul, Camille, for joining us today. But also thank you all for doing the hard work of opening up your process to the public so that they can participate and share some of the things that they would like to see, but also some of the good work that they've been doing. We know that every government office, especially at the White House, doesn't open up their strategy to public comment. And so it really does mean a lot to the community to see that you all are doing this. And so we're going to be a part of the flood, but I promise we're going to make sure that you all have some RFIs that you can get through. For everybody that joined us today, as Suzanne said, please feel encouraged to participate in the RFI. If you have an idea, don't talk yourself out of it. No response is too short. Some responses are too long, no more than 10 pages. But just remember, this is a process. They do want to hear from you. We don't want people to talk themselves out of submitting. We hope this webinar helped you get off the fence so that you will submit. And so thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to turn it back over to Marcy, who's going to give us some final logistics and share with us where we can find information afterwards. Marcy.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and just a tremendous thanks to Deputy Director Stewart Gloster and the entire team from the Office of the National Cyber Director, Paul, Suzanne. Thank you for being here, Suzanne. We do not doubt your sincerity. This was incredible. And I just want to re-emphasize what Nicole was saying, which is that this is such an incredible approach. This is a pioneering process. We have not, over the past decades, seen RFIs out for public input. I like to tell people it's kind of like saying, we're thinking about baking a cake. What kind of cake should we bake? What kind of cake do you like? Rather than, hey, we baked a cake, do you like it? So it is a really important opportunity for people to find out what you're working on and to be a part of the process. It is pioneering, and we in the civic engagement community are really excited to see this process happen. I also want to thank Nicole and Catherine Brooks from Aspen Digital for the incredible moderation, and Craig Newmark for all of the things, including the remarks today, but the ongoing support of this work through Newmark Philanthropies and Aspen Digital. And thank you for partnering with us on this event. And also a special thanks to Jason Bahana, our intern, who helped pull together the resources that are available now at empoweredengagement.org. Just a few more tips and background on the RFI process. There's even a Google form there for some of you. If it's easier to use a Google form to submit your input, we at PopVox Foundation will take care of submitting that to ONCD. So that link is there, but the time is short. So remember, comments are due November 3rd, 2022, 11:59 p.m. And you can submit again by email with the information on the RFI or over at the Google Doc there in the link. And with that, we're going to wrap up 10 minutes early. And thank you again, everyone, for being here and for participating. I look forward to reading the comments as they're shared in the final report. Thanks, everyone. Take care.